First of all, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending my presentation. And in this occasion, I would like to present, say, the most recent result of our study in South Java. So I put the title as an interdisciplinary study of the South Java giant tsunami. Although my background is actually geologist, and I use a lot of methodology in geology, but in this case we also include several efforts in using other disciplines than geology, something like anthropology or history, something like that. That's why then the titles of these presentations using a word of interdisciplinary. So this is actually the spirit behind this study before, that there was a giant tsunami. So this is the scales of the tsunami, that several events of a giant tsunami with a scale of more than 9 occur recently in Japan, for example, and then before it's in Indonesia and also in Chile, for example. So, and by what happened in Indonesia at the times, then there is a big questions about the confidence of geophysicists and geologists. That at the times they have a confidence that they knew where a giant tsunami may or may not happen in the world, and they thought at the times that it was not unlikely that the giant tsunami or giant earthquake happened in west of Sumatra, but it happened in 2004. Then there is a new hypothesis about that giant tsunami with a scales of more than 9 could happen anywhere along the subduction zone in the world. It depends on, it only matters of the recurrence times of the events. And the question is about, then if that is the new hypothesis, then we expect to have a giant earthquake and a tsunami also South Java in the future. And if that is the case, then we also have an expectation that we will have a record about that in the past. That is the spirit. And then, but the problem is that so far in the period along the historical time, in South Java we only have a big earthquake, but not the giant one. So several occurrences of earthquakes, something like in 1994 that also triggered tsunami in East Java, 7.8, and another one in 2006 that also triggered tsunami in West Java, or in the border between West and Central Java, is only 7.7. But we want to find is actually not this one, of course, the giant one. So then we come to the hypothetical idea that whether or not then in the past or in the future also that there was a giant tsunami that generated along the subduction zone sort of Java. So after the 2004 tsunami, then tried to make a kind of hypothetical calculations about the potential of giant tsunami along the subduction zone in the world, and one of them is along the south coast of Java. And he come to a conclusion that the total length of the subduction zone along the south coast of Java is almost 1,800 kilometers, and the potential recurrence interval is about 675 years, with a maximum magnitude of earthquake that could be triggered by the subduction. This long subduction zone is 9.6. But the problem here in Indonesia, we have a very short written historical record. So basically it started from when the Europeans arrived in Indonesia from about 1600, something like that. And if we then got a learn from what happened in Aceh, for example, so this is the 2004 tsunami deposit in South Thailand, and this is the under layer, the soils under the 2004 tsunami deposit. It represents almost 550 years. And so Indonesia only have about basically 400 years written record. Then if the tsunami interval in in the subduction zone of south of Java coast has a recurrence of more than 600 years, then it must be beyond this historical record. Then this is the task of geology to lengthen the record about what happened in South Java, in particular in relations with earthquake and tsunami. So we do kinds of mapping along the south coast of Java using this method. We do the field work, and basically in the field we use gold scores, trenching, geoslicing. We develop by ourselves a geoslicer, and then also we did a longitudinal profile, topo mapping, sampling, and the laboratory. We do sedimentological analysis. The master sizer, we thank you very much for GA that bought us this equipment, and we use it till now and have a lot of students in Indonesia to do their final project. And we also use the LOE, loss on ignition, and lately we also use the XRF analysis because we have a new equipment in our laboratory. And we also use the micro paleontological analysis, mineral analysis, and this is one of the main method we use, C14 datings. So I will explain about the results chronologically, that actually we started the study almost right 1 month before the 2006 earthquake and tsunami in West Java. So this is the first visit in the border of Central and West Java, and at the times in the teams, in the group, Amy Prendergast of GA was there, and we visited several places and try using a code score and try to find any layers in this area, but we didn't find it. So basically we failed. That is why then we jumped to other area instead of persistently doing the same thing around the area. So this is the first visit in Cilacap. And then after the 2006 earthquake and tsunami in West Java, 2 days after that, I had an opportunity to visit the place, and then we did about 10 days field trip there. This is not the findings, but this field trip that leads the findings of these layers. So we went there, and then we find a layer of sand in the riverbanks there. And it is interesting to see that the stratigraphy of riverbank consists of these black layers, that basically organic layer, contain a lot of seeds of palm trees, mangrove palm trees in Indonesia. And then right above this layer, we found a sand layer with undulating structure there. And then suddenly the stratigraphy changed to this brown silt layer there. So the question is, how come that after the deposition of the sands, then everything changed, the environment changed. So we did not find the same environment as the layer underneath the sand. That is the basic question. And then several ideas come out, and one of the idea is possibly that it is a sudden event in the past, and we want to know if it is right, it is a sudden event in the past, when it happened and something like that. And at the first shot, I took 2 samples and got an opportunity to send the sample to Japan. And then I got a result of datings that it yielded plus minus 400 years before present. And this is the first time then after getting the dating result, I got an idea about the possible relationship, or at least not idea, but questions about the possible relationship between the event, if it deposited about 1600 AD, with something even in historical time. And then I remember that in the early of, or about 1600 AD, there was a kind of political succession in Java from the kingdom, namely Hadiwijaya, to the new kingdom of Mataram Islam that lasts to recently in Yogyakarta. So That is the question whether or not that actually there is a relationship between the political successions with what happened, if it is right that this is a big earthquake and tsunami in the coincidence time. So this is just a close-up of this outcrop there, and so to show that how interesting this outcrop to find out the process of the deposition. And this is just the settings of the area. So these riverbanks located right here in these sites. So it's about less than more 350 meters from the coastal line. And this is the area that was hit by the 2006 tsunami in West Java. And we also doing a survey not only at the first swell here, but also at the second swell in this area lately. And this is one of the picture. So I always involve students because we need a lot of actually troops to do this. In Indonesia, basically only several persons that focus on this study. So then I try to invite students to be in the groups. And by thinking about the possible relationship between the events with the political events, then I jumped to books that in Indonesia we call as Babat Tanah Jawa. Anthony Rich maybe will translate it into Greek Babat or whatever, but I translated into the book of Javaland, something like that. It is interesting to see in this book. This is not really a historical book. It's just kind of maybe mixed between legend, myth, or whatever, and historical time. But it is interesting to see in the book that it is written there. I've translated into English in say colloquial English like this. So Sutawijaya headed straight eastward to Opa River, Jam, and flew with the water toward the South Sea. A giant snake lived in the river, brought him to the sea, and landed him at Sawangan. Senopati did a meditation prior jumping into the sea. He again did a deep meditation and prayed to God. He did not get wet. The sea water waved terribly, destroying all life in the sea. And a disaster started. Trees fell down, mound of waves with terrified sound appeared. Sea water got hot and took a lot of life of sea creatures. The dweller of the South Sea got into panic due to heat from Senopati's meditation. Nyi Roro Kidul, the Pateh of the South Sea Queen, got fear of the situation. It is written there. The question is whether or not it is just a myth, or it is actually kind of metaphor of a real event that occurred in the past and has been, used by the Senopati for his purposes. Because at the times, he has no blood or he has not a descendant of the former king. So he needs a kind of legitimation to be a new king and to found a new kingdom. And that is why maybe this is one of the reasons of his smart to use the real natural event and write on it to get a political legitimation from the people. And we visited the place going and back several times, and this is actually the last visit in last year. So for Anthony Reid, maybe it is a good information that there is a ruins of temple in this area. So and we at the times we went into a cave there and dig a hole in the cave.
So where exactly?
So this is in Pangandaran. Yeah, and we also found the layers of Candida tsunami in the cave. So this is interesting to have that. The idea that encouraged us to go into the cave is that the findings of tsunami deposit in Aceh in the cave. That is why then we try to explore the cave, whether or not we will find. And we find one layer there in the cave. And this is the third layer we visited. This is east of Cilacap, so this is the first site we visited with Amy Prendergast, and we went east from the first site here, and expecting that the morphology here is a good trap for tsunami deposit in the past. Learning from the modern post-tsunami survey, we know that the depressions behind the ridge usually provide thicker deposit of tsunami deposit. Then That is why then we expect that we will find good tsunami deposit in this area. The first visit in this site occurred in 2007, I think. And we did a lot of survey in this site. So this is the site we visited with hand boring in several locations. And we also sent a lot of samples for dating from the hand borings. And I will show you the result as a very prop in the end. But basically, the former result in this, the former dating in this, that gave a spirit to me, an idea thinking about the possibility of giant earthquake and tsunami that happened in about 1600 AD. And then in 2 years ago, there is a professor from Brigham Young University with 2 master students visited me and asked me to guide them about a field trip, palaeo-tsunami field trip in Pangandaran. But he also gave good information to me about what he has about the earthquake index that written in actually in Dutch, and fortunately that he has translated the document into English, so it is easy for me to read the document. So this document is very important for me and very interesting, because then in the documents there is a record about what happened in 1564 and 1566. So for your information, that what happened in 1564, this is a natural event in the times. Java, violent earthquake, and in 1586, Java, eruptions of Gunung Gelut, and then also eruptions of Gunung Merbabu as a consequence of the whole island rumble, and also violent eruptions of Gunung Ringgit. So why it is interesting? Because in the same year of 1584, there is an effort of the former king to attack the new kingdom. But then it is written in the book, in the Java land book, that it failed because then the troop has been stopped by the flow of lahar from Merapi. It is written there. But the only difference is that it is written here from Merbabu. And Merapi and Merbabu is 2 volcanoes that close each other, very close. So it is interesting to see that. And in the year of 1586, the new kingdom has been declared by the new king at the time. So there's a kind of coincidence between the natural events here and political events, and also possibly that the natural event has a relationship with some evidence we found formerly in Pangandaran or West Java. So then if it is right that this is a big event of earthquake and tsunami, or giant event of earthquake and tsunami, then we have an expectation to find also evidence in other area. That is why then in 2015, we visited a place in almost western north tip of West Java here in Binuangan. So why then we choose this area is because of the morphology. We saw also comparable morphology with what we saw in Central Java, repetitions of swell and ridge in this area. So we expect to find tsunami deposit in the swell between ridge in this area. And this is the Google Earth image of the area, that there is a long swam, almost 2 kilometer swam with a width of, I think, not more than 50 meters in this area. And we visited this place and doing the same thing with what we do in Central Java. This is the swam. Again, I invited students to involve in, to help us in the field. And this is what we do in the field, just kinds of fun, outbound, something like that. So we have to get into the swamp to take the samples and core, and also measuring the morphology of the coastal area, something like that. This is all students that involved in the study. And this is another finding in the area. So it is interesting to me, even though up to now I cannot explain actually what kinds of process or events that then outcrop this. We know that this is a branching coral, but looks to me that it is still in growth positions there. And it is buried by a thick of a core sand there that contains mostly fragment of cell there. And so at the first sight, I'm thinking about the possibility that this has been deposited in relations with earthquake or tsunami in the past. The growth position, growth positions of the branching coral at least told us that maybe the branching coral is suddenly dead because of any event in the past. But we are not sure about that actually. We are still thinking what kind of process that then influence the occurrence of this outcrop. And this is another activity in the field that we also measure the height of the terrace in the area to find out any possibility of, say, uplifting in the area. And this is just say a sketch of what we find in the area. In the swamp, we find this kind of thing that the mud in the swamp is quite thick, almost 1 meter maybe. So when we get into the swamp, we just stand on these layers of wood there. And then we try to use the hand bore to take the sample here. And then some samples from the wood itself we send to ANU to get to find out the age of the wood, and then also from the layer underneath the wood. And 2 samples of wood from this layer yielded plus minus 300 just before present. It is also, I don't know, but it is also give us kinds of more fuel, more spirit to things that maybe it is right that this is correlable events with what we found in Central Java or in border of Central and West Java. And there is another events there, maybe there. But then we also thinking about the possibility of these events in relations with what written in the Wigman catalog, that there was a big earthquake hit Batavia in January 5th, 1699. So some people speculate about the source of the earthquake. Peter Kamin, for example, he thinks that the source must be something fault on land. But by finding this age, then I'm also thinking that no, it looks like that there is a possibility the source for the earthquake that hit Batavia at the time, or Jakarta now, coming from the subduction zone. So maybe this is also in relations with what we found, the evidence in between Central and East Java there. And this is also what we found in the deposits and Lebak in westernmost sites that we visited. We find a lot of foraminifera there. This is just planktonic foraminifera that associated with actually environments of deep sea, something like that. And for sure that it is coming from the sea and deposited on land. But the question is whether or not it is actually the primary process that brought by the tsunami and deposited on land, or it's just a kind of a river fossils coming from the older formation that has been deposited before. That is the first question. And the second question is that it is interesting among the geologists that focus on palaeo-tsunami study, the question about how then we can distinguish that this is a new forum, a new shallow forum, or it's just river once. Usually people then put a criteria based on the color, on the texture, and whatever there. But for sure that we are not sure about this source, the source of this forum. but it's still very good. Maybe for several persons will see that, oh, it is maybe, but maybe not. And this is also at the same layer. We found a lot of this olive forum. I thought at the first time it is forum, olive forum, and then I got a paper from a scholar from German that study deposit from Sunda Strait and reported about the findings of, he called it as a ooze layer, olive ooze layer, and I thought that because it is ooze layers, then I thought the forum in it is totally olive. But he informed me that no, the forum is just normal, it is white. So what happened with this? And finally I realized that it is not forum, it is just a mold of forum. It is totally glauconite that fills the chamber of foraminifer. So it is interesting to have this because then it's also given information that any time in the past the deposition rate in the area is very low. This is why it gave a way for the precipitations of the glauconite and fill in the foraminifera cells. But still the question is whether or not it is a recent process or it's just a river from the older formations. So this is what I mentioned before, that there is another question or idea in relation with what we found in West Java that yielded dates of plus minus 300 years before presence. In Wigman catalog, there is a note about this, that in January 5th, there was a big earthquake hit Batavia, Jakarta now, and then killed several persons, destroy houses and also barns. So then we speculatively thinking about the relations between what we found in the swamp, the dates, and these events. And then afterward, we still try to find a correlable event with what we found in border of Central and West Java, and also what we found in westernmost tip of West Java. And then we visited an area just sort of Yogyakarta here. And the good things that give us also more fuel is the plan of the Indonesian government to build a new airport in this area. So this is about the site plans of the airport, and it is quite close to the coastal line, the present coastal line. It is only about 250 meters from the coastal line. The problem is that the constructions of the airport will invite a lot of people to come and do any activity there. And by that, then the risk, the tsunami risk will increase. And that is what I focus on. And we visited this place to find any evidence of correlable events with what we found before. This is the sort of Jakarta, Kulon Progo, so this is the 6 sites here. And then at the same time, so we did this in this year, at the beginning of this year, in March. We also visited another place, Easter, in the border of Central and East Java. The name of the site is Pacitan. This is a small bay that also show subtle repetitions of ridge and swell in this area. And we expect to find deposit in the swell in between ridge in this area. And this is what we found. So we are lucky that at the time we could borrow a backhoe from the local government. That is why then we tried to dig a trench there, quite long, about 30 meters trench. And this is what we find. It is not very clear, the layer, but the reddish one is the layer, and I can just show you this. You can see a comparable stratigraphy in this trench with what we saw in the river before, in the river bank before, that there is some things darker color underneath the layer, and then a change after the deposition of this layer. And we try to find out evidence of this layer, whether or not it is a tsunami deposit. And this is what we found. In the layer, we found this forum. So the question is that whether or not it is an evidence of tsunami, or it's just a river fossil from the older from the older formation. It's just a comparable, the color, the texture, what we saw in the site, West Java sites. So we can see this is the color is some of the forum is good and still in a good shape and has a very say a perfect shape, a texture, something like that. But then we realized that the occurrence of this forum in the layer is also accompanied by the other forums. This one has the same layer. It's different color. And this is very, we can see this is much cleaner than the previous one. And not just this, for sure that this is younger than the other one. And we also find this one, the tiny forums. We call it as a baby foraminiferous. That is why that convinced us that for sure this is tsunami deposits. Because this is, we can see this is still transparent and a very perfect shape. And this is very tiny, a baby, maybe only less than 50 micron. And you can see here, this is also the other forum we found there. In comparisons with the other ones, this is very different with that. And you can see here, this is also another baby forum there. That convinced us that, yes, this is a tsunami deposit. You can see here, so, as comparisons. Can you see? So at the times, I asked all my students to identify this forum under the microscope. I asked them, did you find anything strange in the samples? And they say, no, nothing strange. Because this is too tiny to identify under microscope. It's quite difficult to identify. But we realized that there are many small things, transparent things in the deposits there. And we expect, of course, if it is tsunami deposit, we expect that it has been deposited 300 years ago, so that correlable with what we found before. But then we realized we sent 3 samples from these sites for carbon dating, and it yielded older times. So it yielded 1800 years before presence. So it is not in correlations with the events before. You can see this. It's very clear. So this and then bring us to the idea about the hypothesis of a giant hypothetical earthquake and tsunami in South Java, and maybe in relations with the occurrence of the myth or legends about the South sequence there, whether or not that actually the natural events that occur in the past have triggered the appearance of the myth or the legend about the South sequence. So this is the sites we visited so far. So the first one is in this area. This is the site that frequently we visited again and again for several times. And then we go to the west and then again to the east. And now in this year we visited 2 sites. This is Kulon Progo and this is Pacitan. And next year we had a plan to visit also this area. Unfortunately, that in Indonesia we basically only have not more than 14 days in a year to do the field trip. So we have to be slightly, smart to use the time. That is why also the reason why I invited students to involve in, because then this is the only resource we have. And this is the resume of the datings. So this is from all the sites. We can see this is the age, so AD and AD. So this is 1,200, 1,400, 1,600, 1,800. And we can see here, so from the sites of the riverbank, it is quite difficult to find a material for dating right underneath the sands. That is why then we try to find some materials slightly below the sand layer, and it yielded less and more these datings. So this give less and more an envelope of maximum age of the events there. And then at the same site in West Java, we went to the second swell, and then we got a good stratigraphy and take a samples right underneath the sand layer and right above the sand layer. And we get these dates from the samples underneath the sand layer, less and more. And this is also including the samples we took from the West Java sites, from the wood. It yielded less and more in this row. And then from the Pangandaran, we try also to find samples from above the sand layer just to find a minimum age of the events, and this is what we get. So in short, we come to the conclusions that the possible tsunami or earthquake event occur in about less than more than 1600. We are not sure actually what the exact times of the events. It is quite tricky. Just a comparison is just like this. This is what I found in Simelu Island, in west of Banda Aceh, for example. In trends not more than 1 meter, we find this stratigraphy. So I went there at the first time in April 2005, and I found this deposit. In April 2005, I could still find horizons of grass in between the 2004 deposit and 2005 Nias tsunami deposit. But 1 year later, then the grass horizon just disappeared there. So it is quite difficult now to identify which horizon is actually the boundary between 2004 tsunami deposit and 2005 tsunami deposit. And this also gave a lesson to us that there is a possibility of two tsunami events that close each other, and it would be very difficult to distinguish in the field when we found these kinds of phenomena. And even within 1 meter of stratigraphy, we also found another event here. This is in 1907 by datings, an event that tsunami that struck also Simelu Island and Banda Aceh. And this is 1861 that also hits West Sumatra, Padang. It is recorded in a Dutch report. And possibly, this is 1797 even. So within this short geological record, we have a lot of events there. So this is why then it is quite difficult to distinguish exactly when actually an event has happened. And this is also another example. So I take a trend in Aceh Besar. So this is a mainland Sumatra. It is about 1.5 kilometers from the present coastal line, and I found that there is one layer at the top. This is a 2004 tsunami deposit. And then there is a soil layer there. This had been used as a paddy field before the 2004 tsunami. And by careful observations, we will find patchy deposits of sand deposit of 907 in this soil layer. It has been mixed by plowings of farming activity. And there is this white layer, but this is not sand. This is a tephra that I thought it was deposited in relation with the eruptions of Selawah in 1835, something like that. Unfortunately, that we cannot find good materials, organic material for C14 dating. It's quite difficult. So far, we cannot resolve the age of every layer in these trends. But we can now that there is separations of very thin soils there, the black one, and then the white one against the sand's white, and then against the soil there, against the white one, and against. And it is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 50 centimeter. Only 50 centimeter, and in this short geological record, we have a lot of events. So that is why then it is a big challenge for us to resolve the times of every event in the older time. And yeah, this is just kinds of say challenge for us and for, of course, historians and anthropologists, whether or not actually that the legends, the South Sea Queen legend is a metaphor, or is it just a legend? Because why then I'm interested with these things that I have an expectation if then I can explain with the geological evidence that it is actually coming from a natural events, then I can write on this legend to create awareness among the people in South Java that has a belief about this legend. And this is my presentation. Thank you very much for your listening.